You wake up before the sun, and the first thing you feel is the cold biting into your face. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver for a second and reach for a blanket. The kind of cold that could kill you if you make one wrong decision today. It is 20,000 years ago, somewhere across the frozen plains of Ice Age Europe, and you're about to find out exactly what it takes to survive a winter that never seems to end. There is no heater. There is no jacket from a store. There is no weather app warning you about the storm rolling in from the north. All you have is fire, fat, fur, and the people lying next to you, and every single one of those things is the difference between waking up tomorrow and not waking up at all. You crawl out from under a pile of hides and the air outside hits you like a wall. Your breath turns to fog instantly. The ground is frozen solid, and the wind coming off the ice sheets to the north carries a cold that settles into your bones within minutes. Modern humans living in this era, the ones archaeologists call cro-magnon, faced winters that lasted most of the year, with temperatures regularly dropping far below anything most of us will ever experience. And yet they didn't just survive. They thrived, painted, told stories, and raised children who grew old enough to tell stories of their own. The first thing you learn is that fire is not a convenience. Fire is survival, and it is treated with the seriousness of a sacred object. You don't just light a fire, you protect it, feed it, and structure your entire day around keeping it alive. A fire that goes out overnight in the dead of an Ice Age winter is not an inconvenience. It is a death sentence for everyone huddled around it. That is why someone is always awake, always watching, always ready to add another branch or bone soaked in fat to keep the flame breathing. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent years studying the hoansi sand people of the Kalahari and found something that changes how we think about fire entirely. It was not just about heat or cooking. Firelight was when the real human connection happened. During the day, conversation was practical, about food, about tasks, about complaints. But at night around the fire, people told stories, sang, argued about big ideas, and passed down the knowledge that kept the entire group alive. If that pattern held true for Ice Age humans huddled against the cold, then those long, dark winter nights around the flame were not just about staying warm. They were where culture itself was built, one story at a time, night after night, for thousands of years. You realize quickly that clothing is not optional decoration, it is engineering. Bone needles, some barely thicker than a human hair, have been found at Ice Age sites across Europe, proof that people were sewing tightly fitted, layered clothing rather than just draping animal skins over their shoulders. Fitted clothing traps warm air against the body far more effectively than loose hides, and that difference in design could mean surviving a blizzard or freezing to death in it. You watch someone in your group scraping a hide clean with a stone tool, softening it over hours, then piercing it with a needle carved from a reindeer bone. It is slow, exhausting work, and it never stops because clothing wears out and bodies keep needing to be covered. Then there is the question of shelter. In places without caves, some groups built entire structures out of mammoth bones, stacking skulls, tusks, and leg bones into a dome shape, then covering the frame with hides. Sites uncovered in Eastern Europe show these bone dwellings in remarkable detail, evidence that people were capable of massive coordinated construction projects using nothing but the remains of the animals they hunted. You help drag a heavy tusk into place, and you understand that this is not a temporary shelter thrown together in an afternoon. It is a winter home, built to last through months of storms, and it takes the combined effort of the entire group to raise it. Food becomes a different kind of problem in winter. There is no fruit to gather, no easy plants pushing up through the frozen ground. Survival depends on what was hunted and preserved months earlier. Fat, not meat, becomes the most valuable resource in your world because fat provides the concentrated calories a human body desperately needs to generate heat and endure brutal physical labor in freezing temperatures. Anthropologist Richard Lee, famous for his long-term studies of the hoansi san, documented how hunter-gatherer societies built deep knowledge systems around exactly which foods provided which kind of energy. Knowledge passed down verbally across generations because writing it down was never an option. That same kind of knowledge, refined over tens of thousands of years, is what let Ice Age humans know precisely how to render fat from bone marrow, how to smoke meat so it lasted for months, and how to ration supplies so the group didn't starve halfway through winter. You spend an afternoon cracking open long bones with a stone hammer, digging out the marrow inside, because that fatty marrow might be the single most calorie-dense food available to you all winter. Nothing is wasted. Not the marrow, not the hide, not the sinew used for thread, not even the smaller bones which get turned into needles, awls, and tools. Waste is a luxury that does not exist when winter could last another 4 months, and your stored food has to cover every single one of those days. James Sussman, who spent decades living with and studying the Jew hoansi san, challenged the popular idea that hunter-gatherer life was a constant desperate scramble for survival. His research suggested that in many environments, foraging groups actually worked far fewer hours than people in modern industrialized societies, sometimes as little as 15 hours a week securing food. But winter in Ice Age Europe was different from the Kalahari sun. When the cold months hit and food sources vanished under snow and ice, that relaxed rhythm of life disappeared entirely, replaced by relentless coordinated labor, hunting, preserving, building, and mending, because the margin for error shrank to almost nothing. Social bonds mattered just as much as physical preparation, maybe even more. A person who was isolated, who fell out of favor with the group, who couldn't rely on others to share food or take a turn watching the fire, had a dramatically lower chance of making it to spring. Sharing was not generosity in the way we think of it today. It was survival infrastructure. If you gave meat to another family today, you could expect meat from them when your own hunt failed tomorrow. That web of obligation and trust, built and reinforced night after night around the fire, was as essential to winter survival as any tool or shelter. Evidence of just how rich this inner life became during these harsh periods survives in places like Chauvet Cave in southern France, where paintings more than 30,000 years old show lions, horses, and rhinoceroses rendered with a skill that still stuns researchers today. These were not casual doodles. Creating them required time, planning, and resources, torches to light the darkness, pigments prepared in advance, and the willingness of a community to support an artist while they worked instead of hunting. A group barely scraping by would never have had the surplus of time and safety needed to produce art like this. The existence of Chauvet Cave tells you that by this point in the Ice Age, humans had gotten remarkably good at managing winter survival, good enough to have time left over for something as seemingly impractical as beauty. Even earlier evidence of this symbolic mind appears at Blombos Cave in South Africa, where researchers uncovered engraved ochre pieces and shell beads dating back roughly 100,000 years. Long before the deepest cold of the European Ice Age, humans were already thinking symbolically, marking objects with deliberate patterns, decorating their bodies, communicating identity and belonging through more than just words. That capacity for abstract thought, for planning ahead, for creating meaning, is arguably the single greatest survival tool humans ever developed, more valuable in the long run than any spear or fire. It is the reason a hostile, freezing world could be studied, understood, and eventually mastered instead of simply endured. As the winter drags on around you, you start to notice something. Survival was never really about individual toughness. It was never about one person being strong enough or clever enough to beat the cold alone. It was about a group of people who had figured out, through trial, error, and thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, exactly how to combine fire, fat, fur, shelter, and each other into something powerful enough to outlast a season that tried to kill them every single day for months at a time. By the time the first hint of spring finally arrives, you understand something that no amount of comfort in the modern world can teach you as clearly. Every single person alive today exists because their ancestors solved this exact problem, winter after winter for tens of thousands of years, with nothing but fire, bone needles, mammoth bones, rendered fat, and each other. You're not just descended from people who were tough. You are descended from people who figured it out together. And that, more than any single invention, is the real reason the human species made it through the Ice Age at all.